What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Surf and Sales Podcast. I am Scott Leese, one of the co-hosts of the Surf and Sales Podcast and the Surf and Sales Summit micro sales conference down in Playa Grande, Costa Rica. We've got 3 spots left. That's it. We sold a couple in the last day or so.
Yeah.
And we're trying to fill those last couple spots, November 15th through 19th of this year down in Playa Grande. Check it out at surfandsales.com. That's SALES, not the other type of sailing. My good friend is here, Richard Harris, my co-founder, my partner. How's it going, my friend?
It's good, man. It's good. I had a frantic morning, but I appreciate your patience and excited to have this conversation because it's going to be a good one for sure.
I would like everybody to take note of the fact that for the first time in our relationship's history, Richard has told me I have patience.
Yes.
Besides, this is like a major milestone. I feel very warm right now inside. Warm and fuzzy.
Is that about me or is that about you?
It's about me. It's definitely about me.
Just making sure.
Yeah. We have this very special guest today coming from the San Francisco Bay Area. His name is Appy Choudhary, and he is a sales development leader with tons of experience in sales development and startups and tech and SaaS and all that kind of stuff. Appy, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you, Scott and Richard, for having me. I'm excited to be here and share some valuable content, good insights based on, working for high growth tech startups and taking them from Series B to IPO stage. So looking forward to this conversation.
So Scott, right off the bat, he's done something neither of us have ever done.
I know.
Taking someone to the IPO stage. So
So let's talk about that straight away
in the podcast. Yeah, exactly.
Let's talk about that straight away. What was that experience like, taking somebody to IPO?
This was great, Scott. I still remember the date, July 16th, 2021. I was working for a company called Blend, fintech mortgage tech company. And as you know, interest rates were really low in United States, because of which our business was booming, as everyone was either buying a house or refinancing their house, right? So Blend's business continued to boom. During my time, I was there for 2.5 years. And during my time, we grew from 350 employees to 1,200 employees. The company raised their Series F round of funding, G round of funding. They acquired a company for $500 million, and they finally went public. And, the company selected the top 50 performers across the entire company to attend the IPO ceremony in New York.
Did you get to go?
So I got to go. I got to go and experience that live. And, for anyone who's been at startups, this is kind of once in a lifetime opportunity. It's a dream come true. So
did it feel like I just climbed to the top of the mountain type of thing?
Yes, it did. And the awesome part was, a lot of my peers or a lot of people who were around me, most of them did it for the first time. So everyone was having that feeling that, oh, we've reached the top of the mountain. And this is a great, great, great accomplishment.
Yeah. Cool.
But you're still working, right? So you got, as I like to say, you got some fuck yeah money, but not fuck you money.
I mean, it depends. So this IPO happened when the market was pretty inflated. Right. So we opened at a very high price, and things are much different now. And the excitement was still there. And I'm not at Blend anymore anyway. But still great product. It's a cyclical business. So, now that you see that interest rates are going down again, their business is growing again, because the last 1.5, 2 years were not great because interest rates were really, really high.
Yeah, I got a question, because we don't get to talk to a lot of people, and these terms come up, and if you can't talk about it because of something you signed because it's an IPO company, totally fine. But a lot of times, people, they get the IPO and they think, oh my God, it's fantastic, and then they don't realize there's this thing called a lockout or a lockup period, right? So for those who don't know what that means, can you explain it? So because we don't get to talk about it. We might hear about it, but we don't get to talk about it in that level. So if you're allowed to, I'd love for you to explain what that's like.
Great question, Richard. Yes, so usually companies have a lockup period, and what it means is the day they go for an IPO, they set a timeline that within this time, the employees who have equity, vested equity, they cannot sell their equity. Uh, it could be, I mean, at Blend, as an example, it was for 6 months. So what that meant for me is for a span of 6 months after July 16th, I couldn't sell my equity. I could do anything with it after that. So that's what it means. Yeah.
Now,
Got it.
I want to dig into this a little bit, and,
Yes.
and I don't want to, like, upset him or anything, but one of the things that I've thought about and I've always been worried about if any of my companies IPO'd was this lockup period. And if I'm watching the thing open at $20 a share or whatever, and for 6 months I'm watching it go lower and lower and lower, and I'm losing money. If for anybody who can't see him right now, he's pointing at himself with two fingers going, that was me. Are you comfortable talking about that experience and what it's like, and how do you mentally handle that? Because I personally, Richard, I would be having like a nervous breakdown, I think.
Oh my God, it would be the worst. It'd be the worst.
Richard would delete my phone number. So
I was literally going to say, I would just be like, dude, I can't talk to you till after this lockout's gone. So yeah.
So these are great questions, right, Scott and Richard? So first of all, it depends how early you joined the company and at what strike price you got the equity. In my case, something similar happened, Scott. When Blend opened, it opened at a really high stock price, and then in a span of 6 months, it was already low by 50% of what it opened. I didn't lose money by then. I was still making money even after 50%. But because I really believed in the product, and at the same time, because it had dropped 50%, I thought that let me hold on for a longer period of time. I think it'll grow eventually. But then, as you know, the economy kept going down. The business of Blend kept going down. It reached a point where the stock price actually went below my strike price. And the term is basically going underwater.
Yeah,
Right,
underwater.
Scott?
Yeah.
Where now I've started losing money and I'm underwater of what I actually bought those shares for. And it's a terrible feeling thinking from, hey, we're planning to go IPO and this is such a great moment. Going from there to I'm losing money on this deal. Uh, and that's why, a lot of, being a sales dev leader, I meet a lot of young sales professionals. And that's what I tell them, that going for an IPO is not the end result. I think we all should think about it as having a successful IPO rather than just having an IPO, right? Because I've been at companies who've had IPOs, but if you see most of the tech companies who've gone IPO in the last 3 to 4 years, they are much, much lower than where they opened at. So would probably not consider them as a successful IPO.
That's a really good point. I mean, we tend to sensationalize exits the same way. The company had an exit, but not every exit is really like a successful one. And probably to an even more extreme, if you say I took this company to IPO, everybody immediately thinks like massive success, mega success, right, super rich,
money.
But not always the case. Yeah. So yeah, I appreciate you being open and vulnerable and talking about that. That has been a fear / concern of mine, and I would have been a mess. Is there something? Let me rephrase. What did you take from how you built the sales development team at Blend to the next place that you went, and then what are you going to take from where you go next? Because I would imagine the way you do sales development is not the same today as it was 5 years ago.
Great question, Scott. I think if I define it in 2 words, when thinking about going for an IPO, for a successful IPO, it's all about operational rigor, making sure that as a sales development leader, my team is generating quality pipeline, quality meetings, and quality opportunities. not just random conversations. I need to make sure that we're not just paying SDRs commissions for hitting their goal, but it's adding real value to the revenue pipeline of the company. I've been at organizations where I see SDR teams are hitting their goals, but the company is not hitting their revenue goal. I think that's the mismatch where companies are not able to align the goals in the best way possible for the sales development team compared to the revenue team. And I think that's a big learning I had, that, the end goal is not for an SDR, the end goal is not just creating a meeting. Uh, Really high conversion rates from meeting to opportunities, and really good conversion rates for opportunities actually generating revenue for the company.
So,
So
so,
operational rigor is very, very important.
so, and there's different stages. So I have a couple of questions. My first question though is, at what point is it, if you're setting up the opportunities in the meetings and they're not converting, at some point that falls more on sales than the SDR team. Not to say that it's like, hey, hold for Appy, he's going to sell you something. Like I agree with you, there needs to be some level of quality, but were you, in this instance, were you able to determine that that's what it was, or was it, no, we needed to get them further qualified along because of what we were selling? It's a more technical product, or it's a more specific niche or something like that. Like, because I feel like that's a big gray area that feels very loose.
Great question, Richard. I think I've been at both spots, right? Like I've been at a spot where the SDR team is generating really good meetings, but then the sales team is not doing a good job of qualifying them and taking it to the next stage in Salesforce. And I think a bit of the reason where I've seen is the company has hired new AEs. They have a technical product and we haven't enabled the AEs really good. There are no sales methodologies in place, no frameworks in place. So that's something I've seen, and that's the feedback I usually pass on to my AE leaders, my peers, that I think these are the places where we really need to enable our sellers so that they can qualify early stage pipeline to mid stage, and eventually we can have more closed won revenue. On the other side, I've also noticed, coming back to me as well as the SDR team, I think hiring early stage professionals, a lot of times it's important to make sure we are enabling them as well. And it goes back to how technical the product is and how passionate that early stage professional is. If they're passionate, if they're curious, they'd like to learn the product, they'd like to actually qualify the prospect, qualify the account before setting up that meeting with the account executive. Compared to if they're just checking boxes, they'll probably set any meeting thinking that, hey, let me just get some meeting credit. And then I don't really care if it converts from a meeting to an opportunity or it generates any revenue for the company. So then in that case, it's a lot about how do we make sure we're enabling the SDRs? They know how to talk about the product. They're going after the right persona. They know which accounts to prioritize. What's the right title? What are their pain points and challenges? And how do we reach out to the right people with the right messaging?
So I still have, have two more questions and then Scott can ask a question, but my first question is, where's the line, right? So let's say you want because I think this is the question that every organization has, early stage, even at, publicly traded companies and Fortune companies. If I've got someone who's in an SDR or XDR role, what's the minimum level of qualification they should be getting to ensure that it's a quality meeting? Because there is a time where, if you're super early stage, right, you're 5 employees, 10 employees, you got 1 or 2 SDRs. I'm all about filling the calendar before I worry about filling the funnel, because I got to figure out what's still going on in the marketplace. But as you advance and you do start to increase the skill set, what do you think an SDR should be responsible for qualifying? To what degree?
I mean, we can all come up with our own metrics and frameworks at whatever companies we work for, Richard. I think a default good one is BANT, right? Like I'm sure you've heard about BANT: budget, authority, need, timeline. And it depends on what stage a company is and how many meetings are they looking for. But
if I've got an SDR who can qualify full band, what the fuck do I need an AE for?
So that's absolutely right. And that's why I'm saying maybe not doing the full band and maybe just asking, as long as they have the budget and the need of the product, it should qualify. Please pass me on. And then I'll look into, do they have the authority? And timeline also depends, are we starting a new fiscal year? Are we in Q3 and we really need opportunities that should close by Q4? So timing can also be considered by the AEs based on their goals. Uh, so that's the other thing I've noticed, that there's band, but as an SDR, not necessary you're qualifying all the 4 criteria. Even if you qualify 2 of them and pass, then it would be a good qualified opportunity. And then the rest of the job can be done by the sales rep, Richard, to your point.
Yeah. It takes a bold, smart individual to be able to, if you think about the traditional XDR who's often just out of college or it's their first sales job, to start talking about budget, right? Like to get to that. So that's an important skill. If you can teach that early and that person can do that role and do that, then that's probably a sign of a good salesperson. So
yeah, well said. And also, I mean, it depends, because there are certain sales reps who really want to become AEs, and they know and they want to work hard, and they'll do all the coaching sessions. They'll join their calls with their AEs and learn how are they qualifying for budget. And probably after a span of 6 months, they could be a good spot in asking a couple of questions to get a gauge of where this prospect is actually sitting.
Cool.
I want to know about the very specific tactics you would deploy. So let's say Richard and I run whatever company.com, okay? And we're new. We're like seed stage kind of company, okay? We're just trying to get our feet wet and prove this thing out to work. You're the SDR leader, right? Prove this out. Are you calling people? Are you emailing people? Are you sending videos? Are you doing direct mailers? Are you hitting people on LinkedIn? Are you using referrals and partnerships? Like really specifically, like what tactics and channels are yielding the best returns? And let's say you're selling to other tech companies and so forth, not like a services business or anything like that. What are you recommending people do?
Scott, as you can imagine, generating pipeline has become really, really difficult in the last.
It's the number one thing that everybody struggles with.
Yes. So, and at the same time, we all have 4 times more emails in our inbox. We have 2 to 3 times more cold calls coming to our phones. So something you really need to stand out is have that entire multi-channel approach where you are getting in front of prospects, not just in their inbox, but it's a call, it's a text message, it's meeting them at a nice dinner, it's seeing them at a trade show, it's sending them a video, it's connecting with them on LinkedIn, it's sending them a voice note. And just to clarify, this is not just being done by the SDR. The SDR is doing this with a manager. The director is doing that with a senior level executive at the prospect company. And the C level of the startup is doing the same, trying to prospect at the C level of this prospect company. So it's prospecting at every level to actually break into an enterprise account.
But how are we prospecting? How you getting somebody's how you going to get somebody's attention? What's the message? What's the fancy subject line? What's the tool? What's the tactic?
Yeah. So deep diving.
First of all, I agree. You've got to use all these different things at your disposal, for sure. But how?
Yeah.
So I'm your new SDR, and you're coaching me, and you're like, Scott, you need to use an omni-channel approach, right? What is my email? What's my script?
Great question. I think it all goes back to, and this is one skill set I really look for when I'm hiring SDRs, is for any outreach, the first step is you need to do the research to personalize that outreach, right? If you're calling someone, you need to be prepared that what are you going to tell them? What are you going to talk about? And before that, you need to do some research about the prospect as well as the company. And uh, by doing that research, you can hyper personalize your outreach, whether it's a cold call or an email. And the best way of doing it, checking the prospect's LinkedIn page, uh, searching them on Google, searching them on YouTube, coming across a blog post or a quote they've mentioned, and just searching them on Google News and seeing if they can come across anything exciting the prospect said. So this is specific to the prospect. And then now when researching the company, you look at the 10Ks of the company. You look at what stage are they in and where are they willing to invest. And using all of that information to personalize that email, use the right subject line, and then do the outreach, Scott.
Go for it, Richard.
So question for you as we, because this is the same thing. I've been hearing this tactic for 12 years. Personalization, all that stuff, right? So the next question is, are people even doing it better? Is AI helping us do that better? Or is AI really just, increasing the velocity of a spam cannon?
Yeah,
right?
It's the new spam cannon.
Right. And so, there's a couple of layers in that question, but are people getting it any better? Does AI write it better than a human yet?
So that's a great question, Richard. And I think that's what comes to SDR leadership, right? SDR leaders at companies, how are they learning how to use AI better to coach their teams further, right?
Wait. I just want to make sure. You mean it's a manager's responsibility to understand something first and then teach the rep? Like that's just earth-shattering, right, Scott? Because normally we just expect to hire people and think that they're turnkey. So I just want
right.
Anyway, so told you I was on fire today. But go ahead. No, so okay. So now I'm this SDR manager. My team, I'm freaking out because of this AI stuff. All the talk is we're going to get replaced. What do I need to learn to do better with these AI tools at a prospecting level to ensure my career viability for at least the next 2 years?
As an SDR leader, you need to think about how to make your team more efficient. How can you save them time by automating what can be automated by these tools, and how to use AI to personalize content, stand out, and get some attention to what Scott mentioned earlier. So as an SDR leader, you need to learn that first. You need to explore, understand how that can help you and your team. And then you take all of that and coach your team on how to do this better. Whether it's ChatGPT, whether it's copy.ai, whether it's Reggie.ai. We all know AI is coming up, and a lot of sales tools for SDRs are coming up in the AI space. So I think it's the leaders who lead SDR teams to learn it first and then coach their team, because it's change management, right? It's not easy. They need to learn it first and then coach their teams on how to use this. And now going back to what you asked, uh, is ChatGPT going to help me write an email better than an SDR? Well, it depends. I did a lot of enablement sessions around ChatGPT at Iterable for my team, and uh, it's going to give me good content, but there's a need of a human brain who knows how to use ChatGPT and then hyper personalize it further. So the research I would need to do, I would take as an SDR, I would take 30 minutes and write an email. ChatGPT would do that in a few minutes, probably few seconds. But then I need to use my human brain to personalize it further, to filter out the things I don't want, and then send that outreach. So it's going to help me with the research and bring up those bullets, but then I need to know what to write, what to search, and then filter it further before sending it out to the prospect.
Yeah, I certainly agree too that the value of the AI is it lets us use our creative brain rather than our tactical brain. It goes and creates the tactic, but then I can go and sort of perfume it a little bit. I'll make a confession here. I was just texting it to Scott, is that I wrote a blog post this week on sales process versus sales plan, or sorry, sales strategy versus a sales plan. And I tested Claude, right, which is by Anthropic. And I even said, make it sound like Richard Harris and put my website in there. I'll be damned, the thing was 98% right. It was 98% just like me. I tweaked a couple, like, I think it started out with, hey, this is your boy, Richard Harris here. And I'm like, yeah, that's not how I sound. But it definitely had, some of my snarkiness in it. So it's getting, I was impressed because I generally, when I've had it do stuff, it's like 40% right. And then I still have to go fix it. But it's getting better. It's definitely
getting better. Yeah. For someone who uses a lot of this probably on a week-to-week basis, you can actually come and see a big difference on how things were before just 6 months. And I'm talking about 2024 when we start. It's been 9 months since we started this year. You'll see a big difference on how evolved we are even in a span of 6 months.
Do you have a favorite right now? Do you have and by favorite, it doesn't mean this is the best. It's like, these are the ones that seem to be making the most sense, and as opposed to some of the others, whether you want to mention them or not. But because you get attached to a lot of these on a regular basis. Everybody wants to know, well, which one should I use, right? And of course, the answer is,
is there a difference between the two?
Yeah,
that's what's interesting to me is you give the exact same prompt to 2, 3, 4 of these tools. Right. And how much uniformity is there in the answer, or are they all different?
I should actually go do that with what I just did. Yeah, that's a good idea. But what do you think?
The 3 tools that look promising to me, Richard and Scott, I'd go for Clay, ScaleStack, and Copy.ai. I've been impressed by their demo. I did a trial, a test for a couple of reps with Clay, and I've been impressed with what I've seen. Obviously, they're just starting, right? Like, there's so much more they can do, but I've been impressed with these 3 tools. And I think if innovation continues in this space, I think these 3 tools are going to take over a lot of what an SDR does on a day-to-day basis.
So what does the human do? Are we getting rid of SDRs, or SDRs now becoming, machine managers?
I think SDRs need to up-level their skill set to know how to use these tools and make themselves more efficient. If they don't do that, they would not be needed.
Got it. All right. Cool. So I got one more question. I know we need to wrap it up. Let you ask us a question or two. What's the sign of a bad AI tool? Because right now, all of us are such neophytes, right? And we think that whatever it's spitting out is probably better than us. But what are some of those things, now that you've seen so many, that you're like, I would avoid this kind, or I would be concerned if I saw this coming from an AI tool?
That's a difficult question.
Well, you're not here to answer the easy shit.
Valid. And I would definitely not want to pinpoint or name a certain tool over here.
Sure. Yeah, but just like, have you seen it like, oh my God, it does horrible grammar or spelling, or it feels too generic like everybody else, or maybe the best question is, how do you measure which one's right for you? What are the things you look for to make sure it's a good fit for you? Maybe that's a better, easier question.
I think the good thing, what I like, and I'll go back to these 3 tools, they all are offering free trials for a couple of months for a couple of reps. I would highly, highly encourage companies, teams, GTM leaders, sales development leaders to give it a shot, try it with your top performers for a month and see where they're seeing the difference and how they like using it. I'd highly encourage. And now coming back to your question, we don't want to pay to a company that can just write us emails, right? I think it's much more than just writing emails, Richard. It's about the entire sales process and flow. How can these tools, these AI tools help us with the entire process, finding the right people, narrowing the right people based on seasonality and timing, and then also writing the right first email, follow-up email, emails to other peers, and all of that good stuff. So it's not just because if it's just an email, you can probably find a lot of free tools who can write you the first free email. It's the entire process that a tool should be able to do and help you save probably 2 hours a day based on what you've been doing for the last few years.
That's great. That's
2
great.
hours a day is a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Scott, you need that right now.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's 40 hours a month.
Yeah.
That's a whole
week.
That's a whole extra week of work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Man.
So
well, how can we be helpful to you, man? We like to wrap the show by saying, do you have any questions for us or anything we could do for you? How can we be helpful?
Great question, Scott. I've been in tech sales for about 15 years, seen this industry evolve, starting from the 2007, 2008 financial crisis. Then when everything was booming, every company was hiring, every company's valuation, like there were so many unicorns. Now that we're in this stage where things are not inflated anymore, I'd love to learn as sales leaders, how can we continue to contribute and up level the entire community of sales professionals? What are your thoughts?
Go for it.
It's a big question. I think just continuing to share what's working and what's not working and being transparent with folks, being willing to take calls, respond to messages, create relationships with people who are in more junior positions than you or less experienced than you, and this kind of send the elevator back down type mentality, I think is important. Do a better job all the time of actually coaching, teaching, training, developing people, rather than looking for people who can just do everything on their own already. Actually be someone who cares enough to spend the time with their team members to help them kind of get better and build this sort of like coaching tree, right? You've managed all these SDRs. How many of those SDRs do you see become SDR leaders themselves? You've become a VP of sales. How many people that were sales managers under you became VPs of sales? That's the ultimate kind of signal to me of, is Appy a good developer of people, right? And I think more of sales leaders should maybe be measured by that specific type of KPI. Richard?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's one of the things Scott and I've always talked about is like taking pride in it. And unfortunately, I don't think people know to put it on their resume of like, I've had 25 people get promoted underneath me. Well, someone should be curious to know, well, what the heck are you doing? Right? Because if that's happening, then you're clearly teaching them the skill of the job, and those people are being successful. I also think broader than just your immediate team, I think it is about, just like everything else, it's about being altruistic with your knowledge, right? It's about going out and sharing things. It's about us putting this podcast on for people who seem to have an extra free 45 minutes. They want to listen to two idiots talk about sales to really smart people. It's about you coming on and sharing this knowledge and talk about the IPO stuff and writing about these things that nobody knows about, or remembering that there are things that we know and take for granted, that there's somebody who's just getting their career started who have no clue. So just trying to put that karma back into the community as a whole, which now is easier than ever, whether it's on LinkedIn or TikTok, if that's your place, or YouTube or whatever, like it's easy to do. And I think that's a really important piece, because it reminds us, in my opinion, it reminds me that I started with nothing at some point too. Like I didn't have any knowledge. I was just an idiot at some point. Sometimes I still feel like one. So I think that's a really important piece to humbles you in a healthy way, right? And it feels good. Like, endorphins get released when we help people. Like there's studies out there, like, well, that's free, that's easy. I can make my mood change just by helping somebody. So that's sort of the larger picture I see.
Yeah, no, well said. I agree. And, to close it out from my end, huge thanks to both of you for putting Surf and Sales podcast together. I'm sure a lot of people are listening to this and learning from this. So great contribution to the sales community. Thank you.
You're welcome. We appreciate you spending some time with us, Appy. How can people get a hold of you if they're looking to learn more from you?
LinkedIn is the best place to connect with me. So, hey, everyone who's listening, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn with a message on why you'd like to connect.
Fantastic. And real quick, before we get out of here, we want to thank our sponsor, the Tech Sales Accelerator. If you're looking to break into tech and sales and software sales and learn more about SaaS and all that kind of stuff, check out techsalesaccelerator.com. And we will see everybody next time on the Surf and Sales podcast.
See everybody.
Bye, everybody.